The secret rapture doctrine found its stamp in Christianity at the beginning of the 18th century, even though there are some scholars who now take it back to the 1st century, but history believes that it was at the beginning of the 18th century when the evangelical Protestants brought this doctrine in the forefront of Christianity. And today, almost all Christian denominations subscribe to this doctrine. It is only a few who are against it. And because of that, there is commotion in Christianity on which is the correct standing. Today I'm going to do a microscopic study of one of the verses that the pro-rapture guys subscribe or that they use, and that is Matthew chapter 24 verses 40 and verse 41. And I'll quickly read this verse in your hearing. Then shall two be in the field, the one shall be taken and the other left. Two women shall be grinding at the mill, the one shall be taken and the other left. These are the words that are coming from Christ. He is speaking to his disciples, explaining to them things that were going to happen in the last days. And after a lot of things that Christ said, he then speaks of his second coming. And it is in this context that we find these two verses, two being in the field and two also grinding, and one is taken and one is left. And the question that many people have, who is taken and who is left? The one who is taken where to? And the one who is left, where are they left? Are the ones who are taken to heaven, or they are taken to destruction? What about the ones who are left? Are they left for destruction or they are left for salvation? These are the questions that many people have. And those who subscribe to secret rapture believe that the ones who are taken to heaven. So they believe in that scenario whereby two people are in the house or wherever they are and doing whatever they are doing, and one is just taken instantly. So it is like, that's why they call it a secret rapture, just taken instantly, and the one who is left just knows that he is not wanted there in heaven. So we are going to do a microscopic decipherment of this passage and all the other supporting passages so that we can bring about the true meaning. When we truly expound these two verses, they will help us understand whether secret rapture is biblical or it is not biblical. So we are going to use the historical, the grammatical, as well as the theological analysis to these verses to be able to interpret them holistically. Now, the word that is being used here for taken, that is its original Greek, is paralambanetai, and it simply means to receive near or to take unto. And this one is coming from its dictionary form lambano, which simply means I take. Now, if you consider the word in the text only, ignoring the context, you miss the point. What I mean is, if you were to look at that word and just try to bring its general meaning, surely you would believe or think that the word is actually referring to the guys who have gone to heaven. Because remember, Christ is speaking about his second coming. So people will just quickly believe that if Christ is speaking about his second coming and then he speaks about those who are taken, obviously they are taken to heaven. But remember, context is very important. I want to emphasize this point. Yes, it's good to take the passage as it reads, but as long as context says otherwise, use context. because the verse is not in isolation. The verse is formulated from a context, so we need to bring about the true context so that we can bring the true meaning of the passage. Now, the other passage where we also find this word being used is the one that we find in Luke chapter 17, because in Luke chapter 17 we also see the parallel passages of Matthew chapter 24, where Christ also is explaining what is going to happen in the later days, which is a parallel of Matthew chapter 24. So these two, we're going to use them interchangeably because they'll be able to help us to bring about what we want to explain today. The immediate context is the one that we're going to be using. When you look at the immediate context, it covers the analogy of Noah. That is in Matthew chapter 24. But in Luke chapter 17, it covers the analogy of Noah and Lot. And from these ones, we need to get the true meaning of the taken left concept. As I've said, we need to contextualize here. In Matthew chapter 24, from verse 36 to verse 39, Christ is speaking about the days of Noah, as well as in Luke chapter 17. Now, when Christ is speaking about the days of Noah, he says, the coming of Christ shall be just like in the days of Noah, where people were eating, drinking, marrying, and giving in marriage until the flood came. And the Bible says, and it took them all away. Now, maybe it's very important for us to understand what is being said here. The flood came and it took them all away. Take note of the word it took them. Who is taken in this analogy? It is all the antediluvians, the guys who lived during the time of the flood. They are taken away to destruction because the flood is the one which took them all away. So who is left? It is Noah and his family in the ark. So according to the analogy of Matthew chapter 24 from verse 36 to verse 39, the ones who are taken are the ones who are destroyed, and the ones who are left have been saved. If you go to Luke chapter 17, it also explains it very well, because Christ is actually emphasizing on those who are destroyed. He speaks of Noah's people and their destruction. Then he comes down, he speaks of Lot and the Sodomites who are also destroyed. Lot is left and his daughters. Then from there he now comes to the analogy of two who are in the field and two who are also on the mill who are grinding. And we are told that one is taken and one is left. Now, to use analogy, totality, the passages need to agree. If these ones, the preceding verses, are agreeing that the ones who are taken to destruction and the ones who are left for salvation, then it must not be different from this analogy that we have of the two who are together. So from these passages and from the context that we have, the one who is taken for destruction, and the one who is left for salvation. Now, this one, it actually makes sense, because when you now go to Luke chapter 17 from verse 26 to verse 37, there is a question that the disciples ask. After Christ is explained, he is explaining, two shall be in the field, one shall be taken and one shall be left. Two shall be grinding on a mill, one shall be taken and one shall be left. Disciples are now confused and they have a question that they're asking. Where, Lord? Now I want us to use common sense. What do you think the disciples were referring to when they said, where, Lord? Because we have two people here. We have one who is taken and one who is left. Common sense will tell you that they are referring to the one who is taken. Why? Because the one who is left, they did not need to ask where, because we have already been given the geographical context. they are in the field. So geographically, they are in the field. One is taken, one is left. The one who is left, we already know where he is. He is in the field. They are grinding on a mill. So geographically, they are on a mill and they are grinding. And when one is taken and one is left, we know the one who is left, but we don't know the one who is taken where they are. So the disciples, when they ask, "Where, Lord?" they are referring to the ones who have been taken. And listen to the reply that is coming from Christ. Christ says, "Where is a dead body? There the fowls will gather. There the vultures will gather, or there the eagles will gather." The word that is being used there for fowls denotes some birds of prey, the birds that feed on meat. And here Christ is saying the ones who are taken, they're actually fed upon by these fowls. In other words, they've become meat for these fowls. So Christ is bringing this metaphor, and we need to understand what Christ is trying to say, where Christ is arriving with this metaphor. Vultures are a symbol of judgment. If you go to the book of Isaiah chapter 18, when we read verse 1 to verse 6, as well as Jeremiah chapter 7 verse 33, you understand what I'm trying to explain here. The fowls, when they are feeding on the carcasses of the human beings, it is the judgment that has come upon the human beings because of the evils that they have done. So when Christ is replying the disciples who have asked the question, "Where, Lord?" he is telling them that the ones who are taken, they are taken to destruction. They are going to be food for the vultures. That is in a metaphorical sense. Because we know that by the time when Christ is going to come, even those birds, they will be destroyed by his glory. But Christ is bringing a metaphoric sense to help us understand what is going to happen to the ones who are going to be destroyed. So the ones who are taken in this analogy are taken to and for destruction. And if you go to Matthew chapter 13 verse 30, there is also something that is very interesting here, where Christ is also speaking about the wheat and the tares, where he says, "Let them grow together until the harvest. Then the master is going to call upon the reapers, and he will tell them to gather first the tares, and then take them and burn them, and then gather the wheat into the barn." It seems like the ones who are being referred to first are actually the ones who are being judged, and the ones who are referred to later are saved. Just like the analogy that we found in Matthew chapter 24 and Luke chapter 17. During the time of Noah, the flood came, it took them all away. The ones who are taken are the ones that we see being spoken about first before the ones who are left. And in the analogy, two are in the field, one is taken, so which means that the one who is being taken is taken to destruction, and the one who is left what? For salvation. So that is the same thing that is happening here in the analogy of the wheat and the tares. First gather the tares and destroy them, and then take the wheat and put it in the barn. So from all these passages, you can see that the ones who are taken for destruction. They are not taken for salvation. Now, there are some people who quickly rush and they ask the question, but why would Christ, bring the analogy of the two people who are in the field or two people who are grinding on the mill? Now, it's an imagery that Christ is trying to bring to help us know the separation that is going to happen between the righteous and the wicked at the end of time. It's not like it's in the literal sense, because if it was in the literal sense that two shall be in the field, then it basically means that by the time Christ is going to come, every human being under the sun will either be in the field or at the grinding mill. But that is not so. So Christ is trying to bring an imagery of the daily living. Just like when he explained about the times of Noah. People were eating and they were drinking. It's not like they were eating 24/7 or drinking or marrying 24/7. No, but he's trying to bring their daily life. They were living as if everything is normal. Life was just moving fluently and normally. So Christ is saying here, when two are in the field, both the righteous and the wicked are living together. No one knows that these ones have already been marked for salvation, but these ones have been marked for destruction. They think everything is okay until the flood came, until the trumpet sound, when Christ is going to come. So the imagery that we see here is not directly tied to the identification of the two groups. Its primary purpose in the context is to picture the sudden, the surprising separation between the righteous and those who are judged at the return of the Son of Man. So who is taken? The one who is taken for destruction, and the one who is left for salvation. So to use this passage to support the secret rapture doctrine does not stand. It does not agree. It is not biblical. You cannot apply syntax and grammar and vocabulary and end up coming to the secret rapture doctrine using Matthew chapter 24 as well as Luke chapter 17. That is not what is being portrayed here when Christ is explaining to his disciples. Because the Bible, remember, it needs to agree. The Bible has many passages that speaks about the second coming of Christ. And all of them, they tell us that the coming of Christ is going to be a global event. It is going to be visible. Revelation chapter 1 verse 7, it tells us, behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him. If you read 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 verse 16, and the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, and with the voice of an archangel, and the trumpet of God, and those who are dead in Christ shall rise first. So the coming of Christ is something that is going to shake the whole earth. Everyone who is alive during that time will see him. His coming won't be in secret because it is going to be soundy. The volume is going to be high. All the verses that explain about the second coming of Christ are telling us that the coming of Christ is something that is going to be a global event. Everyone on this earth will know that Christ has come. Christ does not need to come secretly. Why would he come secretly? We know he's God, he's sovereign, he's the creator of the whole earth. Why would he come secretly? What is he afraid of? Do you think that God is unfair in such a way that he just comes and he snatches people unknowingly? That is not so. His coming is going to be visible. Those who are going to make it to heaven are going to see him, including those who are not going to make it to heaven. And those who are not going to make it to heaven, they will know the reason why they are left. It is because of their deeds. Everything is going to be vivid in their own eyes. Christ does not need to come in secret. So there is not even a single passage in the Bible which supports the secret rapture doctrine. I know people quickly run to 1 Thessalonians, the one that they use, where they are using, the explanation that is coming from Paul to believe that people are being snatched, but that is not what Paul is explaining. We'll consider that passage in the later presentations to show you exactly what Paul was saying. But in that passage, there is nothing like the secret rapture. So the secret rapture doctrine is not biblical. I know there are people who believe that, after people have been snatched, they will go and live in heaven for 7 years. And after 7 years, they will come back and they will live for a millennium on this earth. But Revelation 20 does not tell us that the millennium is going to be on this earth. It tells us that the millennium is going to be in heaven. So when Christ comes, those who are going to be saved are going to be with him for a millennium in heaven. And then they will come back to the new earth according to Revelation chapter 21 after the millennium. That is what the Bible says. But where did this secret rapture doctrine come from? It's also very important for us to know where it's come from so that we will be able to disclose all the lies that have come. As I've said, it came from the evangelical Protestants. And these guys, when they came with this, it was called a premillennial dispensationalism, which is a futurist doctrine. This one rose because of some papacy scholars who saw that the people were now questioning the papal church. You remember the papal church and the persecution that they did during the time of the Dark Ages. So when they tried, to come clean and to think that they were right there, some people were now actually saying, the Pope is the Antichrist. So these guys, they had to sit down and formulate some doctrine so that they remove the people from focusing on the papacy as the Antichrist. That's why they came with the preterist doctrines, the idealist doctrines, as well as the futurist doctrine. And this one that we have of the secret rapture is a futurist doctrine, so that it goes around the Pope and then it starts focusing on other things and other people. That's the reason why we have this doctrine today. Go check your history, go check the Bible, go and do proper analysis, research. You understand that the secret rapture doctrine is not biblical. There's a reason why we have it today. So, going back to Matthew chapter 24, verse 40, verse 41, or let me say from verse 36 to verse 41, as well as Luke chapter 17. Who is taken? Who is left? The taken is destroyed, the left is preserved. When you interpret these passages this way, you will see that the secret rapture does not fit in, because for the secret rapture doctrine to fit in, the one who is taken must be taken to heaven, and the one who is left must be left for destruction. But the moment you turn it the other way around, to say the ones who are taken to destruction and the ones who are left for salvation, then automatically we cancel out the secret rapture doctrine. So let's stand with the Bible truth, and let's do justice in exegesis and not allow some higher critics to come and bring about some new doctrines that are not biblical, but that are there for some awkward reasons. May we be blessed.